Success is not a destination. It is not something you chase or beg for or hope falls into your lap. Success is something you become. It's not out there in the distance. It's built within you day by day, decision by decision, in silence, in suffering, and in absolute discipline. The man who becomes success is not loud. He is focused. He is deliberate. He masters his emotions and controls his habits. He doesn't wait for a lucky break. He builds himself until he becomes the break. In this video, you're going to learn how to stop chasing and start becoming. We'll dig deep into Stoic wisdom. We'll uncover timeless truths from history and the Bible. And we'll break down exactly how a man becomes unstoppable, not by force, but by principle. This is not just another motivational talk. This is a guide for men who are ready to rebuild their mindset and reshape their destiny. So if you're ready to rise, if you're tired of chasing, then lock in. Because everything you need to become is already inside you. Like, share, and subscribe to join a tribe of men who rise in silence and dominate with purpose. Now let's get into it. 1. The man who builds in the dark. The greatest transformation happens in silence, not in the noise, not in the applause, not in the spotlight. A real man becomes powerful when no one's watching. The man who builds in the dark doesn't need validation because he's driven by something deeper, principle. He knows that success isn't given, it's forged. In the teachings of the Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, we learn one fundamental truth. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Don't talk about success, become it. And becoming it means enduring the grind when the world offers no reward. It means showing up when you're tired, focused when you're doubted, and relentless when you're alone. Take a look at David in the Bible. Before he ever faced Goliath, before he was ever crowned king, he was just a shepherd in the fields, alone, isolated. But in that isolation he was building, killing lions, slaying bears, training his hands for war in secret, so that when the moment came to face the giant, he didn't shrink, he was already ready. That's the blueprint. If you wait for motivation to move, you'll always be late. But if you move in principle, if you grind in silence, then when life tests you, you'll be more than ready. Here's the truth. Chasing success is loud. Becoming success is quiet. One looks desperate, the other looks disciplined. Every man must ask himself, do I want to be seen trying? Or do I want to become something so solid that I no longer need to try? In the Roman Empire, the great general and philosopher emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled during one of the most chaotic times in history: wars, plagues, political betrayals. And yet in the midst of this storm, Marcus found stillness, not by escaping responsibility, but by anchoring himself in Stoic principle. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You don't chase power, you build it from within. And that's what becoming success means. It means mastering the one thing you truly control: yourself. The man who builds in the dark understands that distractions are the enemy of destiny. He deletes the noise. He says no to pleasure. He devotes himself to the craft, the mission, the purpose, day in, day out. You want to be unstoppable? Then build in the dark. Because in the shadows, where no one claps for you, your future is being written. And when the light hits, you won't need to prove anything. You'll already be it. Comment below. I don't chase, I build in silence and rise with purpose. 2. Self-mastery is the foundation of all power. There is no power in the world greater than a man who has mastered himself. Not political power, not financial power, not physical strength, because everything external can be taken. But the man who commands his thoughts, his emotions, his actions, he cannot be broken. You can strip him of status, take his wealth, tear down his name, and yet he will still rise, because what made him strong was never outside of him. It was built within. This is what the Stoics called autarkia, self-sufficiency. It's the root of true freedom and the core of masculine strength. Epictetus, once a slave, rose not by demanding freedom but by mastering his mind. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." He didn't blame his chains, he didn't curse the empire, he looked inward, and in doing so became stronger than the very men who owned him. Here's the truth you must remember: if you can't govern your impulses, you'll never govern your future. If your emotions lead you, your destiny will leave you behind. The man who becomes success doesn't just grind, he disciplines his soul. He knows when to speak, when to wait, when to walk away, and when to strike. Think about Joseph in the Bible, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison, and yet he didn't collapse. He didn't compromise, because his power was not in his position, it was in his character. When Potiphar's wife tempted him, he didn't just resist the sin, he protected his identity. He knew who he was, he knew who he was becoming. That's what a man with vision does. He denies temporary pleasure to protect permanent power. And years later, when famine struck Egypt, when the world was in chaos, the same man who was locked in a cell became the most powerful man in the kingdom. Why? Because Joseph had already mastered what most men ignore: delayed gratification, emotional control, mental discipline. That's the real throne. Let me say this straight. You do not need a woman, a title, or a check mark next to your name to be powerful. You need clarity. You need discipline. You need self-control. Most men lose before they start because they chase everything and master nothing. They chase women before they build value. They chase money before they build discipline. They chase attention before they build purpose. But a real man doesn't chase. He becomes so refined, so focused, so complete within himself that everything starts to shift toward him. He becomes magnetic, not because he wants validation, but because he doesn't need it. And that's what makes him unstoppable. In the Stoic world, this wasn't philosophy, it was training for life. They believed life would test you. And if you were weak, if you hadn't prepared, life would break you. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Wasted time is the greatest theft of power. Every hour spent on distraction, on comparison, on emotional chaos, is a deposit into failure. But when a man says, "No, I train now, I master now, I delay now," he begins to build something rare, inner command. This command shows up in how he walks, how he speaks, how he reacts. He doesn't move because he's desperate, he moves because he's decided. Self-mastery is not about being cold, it's about being unshakable. When emotions rise, he remains steady. When temptation knocks, he remains grounded. When adversity hits, he remains focused. Because his foundation is not built on applause, or comfort, or ego. It's built on principle. That's why you can't be stopped when you master yourself. You're no longer negotiating with the world. You're no longer addicted to opinions. You're no longer begging for peace. You carry peace within you. So I ask you, what would your life look like if you truly mastered yourself? Not just for a day, but for a decade. What kind of man would you become? What kind of kingdom could you build? Because everything you want is already inside you. But it's locked behind undisciplined habits, wasted time, and emotional chaos. Break those chains, because once you command yourself, no one else can ever command you again. Comment below. I don't wait for power, I master myself and become it. 3. You attract what you are, not what you want. You don't get what you want in this life. You get what you are. This is one of the hardest truths a man can face. You can chase success, chase women, chase influence, but if you're not becoming the man who is worthy of those things, they will always run from you. Because life doesn't reward desperation. It rewards alignment. You don't attract what you dream about, you attract what you embody. This is why so many men stay stuck. They pray for a future they're not preparing for. They hope for a queen while still acting like boys. They want a throne, but they haven't conquered their lower nature. But real transformation doesn't start with chasing, it starts with becoming. And this principle is everywhere, from Stoic philosophy to biblical history to the greatest empires ever built. Let's go back to the story of Gideon in the Bible. When God called Gideon to rise up and lead an army to victory, Gideon didn't believe he was capable. He said, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest and I am the least in my family." But notice what God said in return. "Go in the strength you have, I will be with you." Go in the strength you have. In other words, you don't need to be someone else. You need to become who you truly are. And when Gideon accepted this, he attracted an army. He led men. He won a war. Not because he chased validation, but because he stepped into alignment with who he was called to become. That's the secret. When you rise in character, the right things begin to move toward you. The right people, the right opportunities, the right future. But until then, nothing will stick, because the universe, the battlefield of life, God himself, will not reward a man who hasn't earned it in the dark. You attract what you are. So if you're constantly attracting chaos, confusion, low-quality relationships, fake friends, broken cycles, it's not a reflection of the world, it's a mirror of your inner condition. Change your internal world, and your external world has to change. The Stoics were masters of this. They understood that your outer world is simply an echo of your inner discipline. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule Rome by chasing titles or demanding loyalty. He ruled with quiet dominance because he ruled himself. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, think about that. If your thoughts are scattered, anxious, desperate, your life will reflect that chaos. But if your thoughts are clear, focused, disciplined, your life will begin to mirror that order. This is the law. You rise to the level of your standards, not your desires. And the painful reality is, most men don't even have standards. They drift, they settle, they make excuses, they confuse movement with progress and desire with discipline. But the man who becomes unstoppable is different. He asks himself the hard questions. What am I tolerating that is beneath me? What habits are poisoning my future? What kind of man must I become to attract the life I claim to want? Because he understands you can't plant seeds of mediocrity and expect a harvest of greatness. So what do? You align your actions with your future self. You stop chasing and you start becoming. You build the body, you master the mind, you elevate your presence, you raise your standards so high that anything unworthy of your mission naturally falls away. Because here's the truth, once you become, you don't need to chase. Think about gravity. The earth doesn't chase anything, it pulls everything toward it because of its mass, its weight, its force. That's how your presence should be. Become so grounded, so solid, so aligned that people feel it when you walk into a room. That is the man who doesn't chase. That is the man who becomes. And when you reach that level, when you live from that core, you stop seeking, you stop begging, you stop convincing. You simply attract what is yours. Not because of luck, not because of manipulation, but because you've become the man who's worthy of it. Comment below. I don't chase, I attract through alignment, discipline, and power. 4. The power of delayed gratification. How men build empires in silence. Empires are not built in the moment. They are built in the mundane, in the silence, in the thousands of days no one sees, in the disciplined hours no one applauds. Delayed gratification is the gateway to greatness. Every man who has ever achieved anything extraordinary had to make a sacred decision. I will suffer now so that I can stand tall later. Not suffer aimlessly, not suffer like a victim, but suffer with intention, with clarity, with purpose. That's the ancient formula of real success. Sacrifice now, reward later. But today's world tells you the opposite. It sells you comfort. It trains you to seek dopamine at every turn. Swipe here, watch this, click that, buy now, sleep in, skip the grind. And what's the result? Men with no discipline, men with no vision, men with no power. But you are not like them. You are called to something higher. You are not here to consume. You are here to build. You're here to carry the burden now so the world bows to your legacy later. Look at the lives of men who built real empires, biblical, historical, and Stoic alike, and you'll see a single thread. They all chose discipline over indulgence. They chose silence over applause. They chose the long road because they knew the shortcut leads to weakness. Take Moses. Raised in the palace of Egypt, he had access to everything: luxury, wealth, influence. He could have taken the easy route, but instead he chose to walk away from it all to pursue a higher calling. And for 40 years he wandered in obscurity, not for days, not for weeks, for decades. That's the power of delayed gratification, because when the time came, when destiny called, Moses was ready to lead. And not just lead, he led a nation out of slavery. He didn't chase greatness, he became the vessel for it. The same goes for the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius didn't become emperor overnight. He trained, he wrote, he meditated, he prepared himself daily to carry the weight of the Roman Empire without needing applause, without needing shortcuts. He once wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" That's delayed gratification in action. Is this choice serving the future I want? Is this indulgence worth the price of my discipline? Every great man asks that question, and every weak man ignores it. Because the truth is, you can't have long-term power if you're addicted to short-term pleasure. The man who chases pleasure becomes a slave to it. But the man who masters his appetite, he becomes a king. Julius Caesar spent years in military campaigns, sleeping in tents covered in blood and sweat, not for the glory, but for the preparation. And when he returned to Rome, he didn't need to prove himself. His reputation had already been forged in fire. It's the same for you. Every time you delay gratification, every time you say no to what's easy and yes to what's necessary, you are building your empire. When you wake up early instead of sleeping in, you are laying bricks. When you train instead of scroll, you are adding stone. When you invest instead of spend, you are strengthening the walls. And here's the secret: no one will see it until it's already done. That's what makes it powerful. Real builders don't announce. They build in silence. They show up every day with a quiet war in their soul. And they win. Not because someone claps, but because the future demands it. Because the version of you you're becoming, the kingdom you want to rule, the legacy you want to leave, it requires a different level of sacrifice. And if you can master the discipline to delay gratification, you become the man who controls time. You see further, you act sharper, you command more. Because when others are indulging, you're investing. When others are relaxing, you're refining. When others are celebrating, you're still becoming. That's why they'll never understand your silence, but they will one day bow to your result. Comment below, I delay the pleasure because I'm building a kingdom they can't see yet.